Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the LA Volleyball Podcast. My name is Amri Azarli, head coach for the Van Nuys Wolves. If you're new here, each week I'll be going around bringing coaches on from the city section to talk volleyball. This week we have a 4-time LA City Section champion as well as a 3-time City Section Coach of the Year. Please welcome from Chatsworth High School, Sina Aghassy. Coach, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Omri.
So, what have you been doing to keep busy during this quarantine?
It's been a challenge. When this all first happened, my first instinct was kind of boys volleyball season and teaching. I'm also a math teacher at Chatsworth High School, and I think probably one of the biggest transitions was trying to figure out how to take, teaching algebra in the class and make it effective online. And just kind of, picking up some old habits that, I used to do when I was younger, playing video games. That we've been playing a little Warzone here and there, getting to connect with some people that maybe I haven't talked to in a long time. And, just trying to stay active as much as possible. I think it's really easy to just get caught up in staying indoors and not doing much. And, I was able to, pick up biking again, going out and go on the walks. So, it's been a challenge trying to stay engaged with the kids, students, players, but just trying to make as much use out of this time as I can.
Yeah, I definitely feel you there. I know my kids and I, we miss volleyball a lot. It's the thing that connects us all. So I totally get it there. Before the season ended, you guys were ranked second in the LAVCA poll. You actually were the creator of the LAVCA polls. But could you give us a little insight on what you thought about your second seed ranking?
Well, I joke around about this is probably the best winning percentage we've ever had. We were 2-0, so we went undefeated all season. But the LAFCA poll, I mean, it's great. Actually a couple of years ago we started that, and it was mainly to just kind of generate as much interest as we could within the city. I know some coaches aren't happy about it sometimes. Why is my team ranked here and there? And reality is the kids love it. They like to see where we rank this week, kind of what's going on. And, it just gives everyone something to talk about. The Southern section was doing it for a long time. And I looked at that and I said, why don't we have that? Whatever we can add to our section and our sport that will help, why not? And I know that sometimes people are unhappy or excited about it. For me, it's not something that I look at and, wow, we're number 2, we're number 1. But it's more so just kind of what happens at the end of the season that's more important for me.
For sure. I know Renee Lopez is always like, just keep on playing at the end of the season. The best team will find its way to the finals. I totally agree there. Could you speak on some strengths? I know you guys only had 2 seniors this year. Can you speak on some strengths in your young core or your 2 seniors?
Yeah, I talk to people about this, about, how hard this season has been. And, I think one of the things that I say a lot is, I'm kind of fortunate to only have 2 seniors because this season has been so tough, to have to tell your team and especially your seniors that this is the last time you're going to play volleyball. And, for our 2 seniors, led by kind of Gunnar Welch and Luis Gomez. Gunnar, played volleyball all 4 years at Chatsworth. He was a starter on my 2019 team and kind of was stepping into kind of a leadership role as an outside hitter, had been working his butt off. I think of all the players that I've coached, Gunnar kind of has just, like I call it this virus of just having to be in the gym all the time. And, when he shouldn't be at the gym, he's still there. And, it really was tough for me to see Gunnar not be able to finish out his senior year, and also Luis. Because both guys were, playing club, for us this past season. And the level of growth and maturity that I saw in them was huge. And I, without a doubt in my mind, I could say that they're probably 2 of the top guys in their position, Gunnar being one of the top outsides and Luis, being one of the top liberos. And, we had a really good mixture of those guys along with some freshmen and sophomores from last year. One of our outside hitters, Ben Harper, who was selected All LAFCA as well. He also puts in a lot of time. He's kind of like a 6'2" sophomore this season. He has a buddy named CJ Blankenship, who's also, 6'2", 3 middle / outside that we had. And then we had an incoming freshman this year. Actually, probably the first time I've had a freshman start on a varsity team in Jacob Perez. So, we had a lot of good pieces that we're excited about. Little young, but, we won't know where they would have ended up, unfortunately, with the season, but there was a lot of potential and promise. And, it's unfortunate that we couldn't see how it played out.
Mm-hmm. You guys did only have 2 wins, one against Rio Mesa and the other against St. Genevieve. Could you just speak a little bit about what kind of goals you guys set for, let's say, the league season or the playoff season?
Yeah, so every season we go into it with the mindset of a city championship. I think being fortunate of being at Chatsworth for 4 or 5 years now, some of these younger / older guys have seen some of the other teams be successful, and they have that mindset. It's kind of funny because I always, when I walk in the gym, I always just kind of take a glance at the wall. And some of the kids always kind of look at me like, "Coach, what are you doing?" I was, well, I'm admiring some of the successful teams that have been here at Chatsworth. And, they look at that and they say, I want you to look at me on the wall, Coach, and that's something that they aspire for. So, that's kind of something that we always talk about in the beginning of season. And, being realistic, not every year it's possible, but, at least if you have that in your mind, the kids drive for that. And then under that, obviously going, undefeated in the West Valley is always something that we dream of. Sometimes that's harder than winning a city championship because, when you go 10 games of playing quality teams all the time, it's really hard to stay on your A game all the time. There's been years that we've gone 9-1, 7-3, and still won the city championship. But, getting first in the West Valley says a lot, being in the strongest league in the city. And then obviously winning a tournament. It's not the biggest goal for us, but, I always on our schedule put all day, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. for all the tournaments. And I tell them, look, I don't know what time the tournament's going to end, but expect to be there at the end, because if we're going to go, we want to get our money's worth and be the last team in the gym. So those are some of the goals that we've talked about over the year.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I saw you guys at the Cal Lutheran preseason scrimmages. You guys were doing pretty well. Played a good game against Palisades. I don't think I saw you guys play any other games. But, in past interviews, you've said your favorite experiences were, not as much on the court, but more off the court. Those are the experiences you remember, such as the tournaments. Could you talk about your favorite moments with either, this team or even your girls' team?
Yeah, it's just, the more and more I coach, I think this is now like year 7 or 8 for me. It's kind of more the journey. Like right now, for example, we're heading into summer. I can't help but think, the different leagues we're supposed to be going to for girls volleyball, and sometimes we travel a lot, and that's actually something that I've kind of learned, from Coach Mercado over the years, just playing and kind of getting to know him. Just those trips and being able to be around the team and, just the funny, quirky moments that you have with your team throughout the year, whether it be just kind of a team lunch, before the tournament, in between the tournament, just kind of hanging around and joking around with each other. Those are the things that you value a lot, and obviously the wins and losses are, really important too. But also it's just the experiences, like I said in a previous interview, it's kind of, like, for me, I don't really remember what happened in the preseason. I don't know which teams. I know what playoff wins and losses we had, but it was more so the experiences of going to Vegas and, being with my teammates and enjoying those moments. Because one of the biggest things that I tell the kids is, volleyball might seem very important to you now, but, volleyball at some point stops, and it's the relationships that you develop that, end up lasting forever, potentially. And, I even kind of make a joke about it. One of my assistant coaches for a long time, Coach Pepe, from high school to now, one of my best friends, Coach Alex, you develop these relationships that you will, value for a long time. So those are some of the things that, I try to tell the kids to hold dearly.
Yeah, I've been a couple of your practices. I did actually have the pleasure of being coached under Sina Aghassy for a short time before I got the Van Nuys job. but him and I developed a pretty good relationship that we carry on to today. But I've noticed that you are not afraid to go and step into practice or even open gym and just get into it with your kids. Could you talk a little bit about your coaching style and where you kind of developed that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is, making it an atmosphere that's fun and, kids want to be a part of. It's um I would say probably in college when I started heading into the tail end of it, it kind of felt like a job. It felt like every day was kind of the same thing. And obviously, when you feel like something you're doing for 3, 4, 5 hours a day sometimes is a job, that's kind of when the purpose isn't quite there. So I try to make sure it's engaging for the kids. If that means I have to step in a drill, make a joke here and there, hold them accountable, yell at them sometimes, I think that's really, really important. And, having a high level of intensity, and it's different, girls volleyball to boys volleyball, how to keep them engaged. On the boys side, you might have to make things a little bit more competitive. You might have to keep the talking, to a lower time. They might lose focus. On the girls, they want to kind of do a little bit more of the drills where it takes the whole team to kind of figure it out. So it's hard and it's challenging, but I think that's what I enjoy the most about coaching is the fact that each team is different, and the dynamic is different. And even if you have, let's just say 11 returners coming back, just that one player on that team makes it a whole different team. And that's kind of what makes it fun, and interesting. And that's kind of how I approach coaching in the gym.
So going back into your past a little bit, I know you played at Taft High School under the legendary Arvin Mercado. You also played, in the West Valley League. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to have played in the West Valley League and now to coach in the West Valley League?
Yeah, so I mean, playing for Coach Mercado, he was one of the most influential, I want to say, perspectives that I had just kind of growing up. I was always a sports person, so sports engaged me the most. Little known fact, I played basketball my whole life. I even played a year of baseball at Taft. But it wasn't until I joined volleyball and kind of understood the dynamic of the sport and playing for him, that kind of motivated me a little bit more to kind of be the person who I am today. And it was definitely a challenge playing in the West Valley League. I mean, you have no days off. Maybe some team will have a down year here and there, but to have your A game, like I talked about earlier, for 10 games is pretty tough to do. Back in the day, we would see some really, really good players. Granada Hills with Jonathan Benheim. There's the Dubois twins at El Camino. There was some really, Leo Granado at Cleveland. There were some really good teams and really good players. And, believe it or not, some of the same coaches over that span. Coach Harp's been there for forever. Mercado's been there for so long now too. So, and even with Laidlaw, it's in the sport of volleyball, it's hard to keep a coach for 5, 6 years. This. So to have that continuity of coaching and just greatness with some of the programs has definitely been a challenge. And it's cool to now be on the other side of it coaching, because if you have a down year, you don't get to not schedule Granada Hills. You're still going through that gauntlet, and it's a challenge that I relish as a competitor because if you want to be the best, you got to play the best all the time, and that's something that I value a lot.
Mm-hmm. So before you coach at Chatsworth High School, for those of you that don't know, Sina Aghassy did coach at Pauley High School, right, and Taft High School as well as an assistant. Can you talk? Coach will let us know that the skill level in the Valley Leagues, rank from the West Valley, which have ECR, Granada, Taft, Chatsworth, Cleveland, and Birmingham, and then it goes to the Valley Mission with Van Nuys and Sylmar, Kennedy, and then it goes to the East Valley with Verduga Hills, Pauley, and Grant. So you were at Pauley, right? What was the skill gap, in your terms?
Well, definitely my experience at Pauley was completely different. When I was done playing at Hawaii and CSUN, I got into coaching, and at the time Renee Lopez had kind of pointed out that Pauley was open, and I kind of was making my transition from player to coach. And at the time I applied for a position that I had no idea about, and it was the boys program. There's only 2 kids in the whole program, not a lot of support and whatnot. So I learned a lot in that first year, just with everything, teaching the fundamentals, building a program, understand. And it was hard. And any first year in coaching is hard because you're just learning the ropes. And, outside of just the coaching, it's paperwork. It's, your AD, your AP, just figuring out who's who and what's what. And definitely one of the experiences being in the East Valley was just playing Verdugo Hills and Will. And, it's definitely not the West Valley where you're playing teams left and right. You'll have a Chavez that's kind of at the time was brand new school. You'll have a North Hollywood that's not as strong, but then when you get to Verdugo and you're playing a team that's just kind of absolutely ran the table, kind of like Granada Hills has for a little bit on the girls' side, it's really tough to kind of dethrone the team that's just been dominating. And, there's still some really good players. I think at the time, Will had a guy by the name of Joseph Archiga, went to play at Pierce and also still coaching now, who's really good. And it was definitely challenging because, from the poly program, I had to kind of build it from the bottom to where it was. Whereas kind of when I got to Chatsworth, there was already something there that just kind of needed to be built upon. So that was definitely a challenge. But definitely the East Valley was a great experience. We have had some battles over the years, me and Will. And actually, I actually kind of hated him a little bit. I know he talked a little bit about kind of, those coaches that you love and hate, and Che being one that you cannot hate. But this, Will gets pretty fired up and, he'll say some things within a game. And, I have probably some stories about that, but, we've just gone definitely into battle, and it was awesome experience for sure.
Could you tell us about some stories you may have had during your time at Poly? The East Valley's got a lot of great history in it. What are some stories you have from your time there?
Yeah, probably one that sticks out the most to me is probably the battles that I've had with Verdugo Hills and Will Reinhardt. Like I said before, Will and Verdugo were having such a success in that league that it's really hard to kind of beat them and take them off, the top. And I remember in 2013 with our girls, we ended up playing Verdugo, and we had a really strong team. They had a really strong team. I think that year in Division II, they played Eagle Rock in the finals like they did a couple years back. And we were in Division I. So we ended up playing at Poly. And, Will is, like I said, such a fiery guy. He's talking, he's yapping, I even remember Will from when I played. We had beaten Verdugo and, we upset them in 5 and their fans are going crazy and Will's yelling. It was just so crazy, and in that game, they were beating us. They were beating us pretty good. I think they had beaten us 2 sets already. And it's something in the 3rd set. I think there was just a stoppage with the ref. And the ref comes over, there's a problem with the book. Some high school kid doesn't know how to do it, go figure. And the game has stopped, and Will walks up to the ref and says, what's going on? And, who cares? I just want to play. We're beating these guys in 3 anyways. Let's get on with it. And and my first year with the girls, I'm like, dude, this guy is a dick and, whatever. And I didn't like that. And my girls had already built up this like rivalry with them over the years. This is my first year. And they just were pissed. They were so mad, and and I didn't, at that point, I just stepped back. The girls kind of knew that they wanted to beat these guys even worse. Not that, they didn't, but that just was that extra fuel. So sure enough, we come back, we end up going into 5 with them. We ended up losing, I think 16-14 in that last set. And, we shake hands, and, forever in my head, I'm like, dude, I don't like this guy. He's just, all about talking smack and, whatever. And sure enough, that same year, we have our end of the year, league meeting. And, he's like, Sina, and he like, gets me a beer, and we're talking, and he's joking. And just Will is such a, like turn it on, turn it off type of guy. And he's just like a competitor at his core. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned over the years is, he's such a competitive guy that he turns into this, like, I kind of imagine it's like the Hulk, right? Where he's just not who he is. And then after it's all said and done, he's just kind of all jokes and all fun.
You mentioned at a high school you ventured and played at Hawaii and then CSUN. Could you what was your experience like?
Yeah, I played club my junior, senior year, and that's kind of when I started to get an idea that maybe I wanted to play in college. And actually, when I was in high school, I'd kind of have like this Hawaii sticker on my folder and kind of tell people, hey, I'm going to go play there. And, people oftentimes when they hear about your dreams, whatever, so when I got into my senior year, I started kind of reaching out to colleges, trying to get, my name out there and try to see if this was even a possibility. At the time, I had like an aunt that lived out there, so I'd visit, kind of check out the campus and whatnot. And so what ended up happening was I kind of got some interest. Coaches came to watch me. And actually, believe it or not, the one time the Hawaii coach came to watch me play, I probably had the worst game of my life. It's just nerves and this is something that all players have. You go try out for a team, anything, there's going to be that pressure. And for some people, they relish it. And the higher the stakes, the crazier it is. So, for me, I had probably one of my worst games. But I did some good things. And after that, I had my club coach kind of talk to the coach. Yeah, I don't know if we can offer him a spot really, but he's more than welcome to kind of come out here and see what we can do. So at the time, I believe CSUN had recruited a libero from Hawaii actually, who I kind of knew of. Jalen Reyes, he actually coaches at Nebraska now with one of my buddies over there. And so I said, to myself, hey, I can either go walk on at Hawaii and try out, or I can go to CSUN and walk on and try out, But for me, it was more so an experience of kind of getting away from what I was accustomed to for 18 years of my life. And I went out to Hawaii, kind of just tried out, walked on. There's a lot of grueling things that I had to go through, mile runs, workouts. And it's kind of like, they put you through this test of running miles in the morning. And every morning there's less many miles away from home. This is not going to be my life. If I'm not going to make it a mile that holds me back from, achieving my dream. So, and sure enough, I made it through all those tryouts and all those things. Coach gave me a walk-on position. And at that point, I think probably one of the best advice that I ever gotten in college was one of the players that was like a junior or senior said, the walk-on is just something given to you. It's what you do with that that's going to determine if you stay on this team or in this program. And I kind of thought about it and I said, okay, that's a pretty good point. So I made it a fact to just make sure that I was the first guy in the gym and the last guy in the gym, and with that, you have to set down the whole nets by yourself, right? So this is kind of where I developed this mentality with one of my buddies out there who's I still keep in contact. And, I sure enough kind of stuck it out. I played there for 2 years before I started getting a little bit homesick, definitely a change in lifestyle from LA to Hawaii. The weather, the people, the activities that you do. It's crazy different to be on an island where it's an hour from one edge of the island to the other, compared to being in LA where it's all about nightlife and driving around and doing this. So that was definitely an experience. And obviously coming back home to CSUN and playing under Jeff Campbell and kind of getting the starting position there my sophomore junior year was really cool. And those are definitely experiences that I'll cherish forever because they built me into the coach that I am, the player that I am, and most importantly the person that I am.
So you mentioned Jeff Campbell and Charlie Wade, of course. Could you talk a little bit about the differences between their coaching styles?
Yeah, and when you talk about those two guys and then you even bring in Mercado, they're just completely different people. Mercado, I think Will said he was this kind of like Zen master that just kind of like puts on the incense, and that's kind of very, true to kind of the guy that he is. And Charlie Wade, when I first got there, it was I think his second year or third year, and he's kind of just like a business guy. And volleyball in Hawaii is completely different than what it is here. When you go out here in California or anywhere kind of in America, you go to a park, basketball is being played, right? Baseball is being played. When you go to Hawaii, people are playing volleyball regularly on the beach, on the grass. So, it's something that they're more accustomed to watching and being a part of as they're growing up. And playing in the Stan Sheriff Center where there's 10,000 people on a sold out crowd watching you play, it's a big deal. They don't have professional teams. It's literally So it's a crazy experience to be out there. And I think for him, he was more so a manager of kind of promoting the sport and making sure, and he had really good assistants. I think at the time he had Dan Fisher, who was actually the coach that kind of had contact with me. And he kind of ran the practices more so. Charlie kind of, make sure everything was going okay, which he was very good at. And Dan Fisher was just an awesome coach. He, went to Concordia, won a couple NAIA championships there. He's been at Pittsburgh now, Pitt, and he's, been in a couple tournaments there. So he's been doing really well. And then Jeff Hall, who was now the head beach coach at who's a phenomenal coach. And even, Robin Amos Santos, she was the volunteer assistant at the time. She had just got done playing with the national team. And she's now the head women's coach. She took over for Shoji. So there was just a really good staff there that he had that, really have cultivated into, what you see now with the Worsley brothers and, Rado and all those guys. And Jeff Campbell was definitely different as well. When I played at club, one of my assistant coaches was Matt Stork. His dad's Jeff Stork, coaches the women's side. His younger brother played at UCI. So when I got to CSUN, playing for a guy like Jeff Campbell, who's kind of more so, takes these projects on, one that sticks out, from the city section is, someone like Arvis Green. You talked to Memo about him. A guy like Greg Faulkner, who played at Fairfax. And then, these aren't guys that are highly recruited, right? They're just really athletic guys that kind of need to be coached up. So he's done a really good job of that over the years of kind of, developing some of that city section talent. And, when I got there and being able to play under him and, with Greg Faulkner and, I had Matt Stork, who was my coach in club, playing with him was really cool. So both experiences were really awesome. And, both coaches kind of helped me out.
So after you finished coaching at Poly, I know you took a step back to be an assistant to go to Taft, correct?
Yeah, so I was at Poly for about 2 years, and that was kind of tough to say goodbye to because, when I start something, I really want to finish it. But, a big reason why, I had left Poly, I didn't mind not being great. It was more so, it was more so when you're trying to go to off-season leagues and get better and, turn it around year after year, you need commitment. So if I text a group of 11 girls and I only get responses from 6 or 5 and we need 6 to play, it kind of becomes really tough. So, obviously driving from the Valley to Poly was, kind of a burden in itself of like an hour a day almost. So I decided, what, let me just kind of step away from it. At the time I had applied to a couple of places to head coach. I think I remember it was El Camino was one of them. Not a lot of people know this because it was, back in 14, 15. At the time, Che was, at El Camino coaching. He was kind of taking a step back. Actually, I had applied. I think Tim Bergeron at Eagle Rock had applied. And it didn't quite work out for whatever reason. I think at the time I was 22, 21, and, maybe they felt I was a little too young for that. And they ended up going a different direction. And I think they went with a guy named Howard Kahn, who ended up not working out. And then Alyssa Lee, who was the JV coach at the time, stepped in and, did some really great things over there. And I said, okay, well, I can either jump into something that I'm not really, motivated to get into, or I can just kind of take a year off and see what happens and maybe see if Coach Mercado needs some help. Because when you're playing for a coach, it's a lot different than when you're kind of helping out and coaching and in, all those talks that are going on behind the scenes. So, I joined their staff in 2014, I believe it was. And, fortunately, they were coming off a championship. We were able to repeat that year. I developed a stronger bond than what I had with Coach Mercado. Even Renee Lopez and, someone like Minnie Vu, who played at Van Nuys as well. So that was definitely a cool experience, and I found myself falling more in love with head coaching because when you're sitting on the bench and, obviously Coach Mercado's doing his thing and you're just kind of like bursting to want to stand up and call something out or, but that's not your role, is tough. So it was definitely a good experience to learn and kind of take in a lot of things. And then obviously the transition to Chatsworth ended up pretty good, if you ask me now.
Yeah, it must have been a pleasure coaching someone like Andrea Bosnick. That Taft, she kind of carried Taft on her back those 2 back-to-back years. If you don't know who that is, you should go on YouTube. Both those games are on Renee Lopez's YouTube channel. I think one
And I'll
game.
even
Mhm.
and I'll even add, Andrea, and I think Renee had deemed her the Bosnian bomber. She was a special player. I mean, I remember I was doing stats that year. We played Granada, and I think it was a 5-setter. We went to Granada. We beat them in 5, and she had somewhere 43 or 46 kills. And, it's just, to coach someone of that talent. And obviously she went to Cal Poly after that to play. It was really cool because, you don't know what it's like to coach that talent until you have it. And sometimes it's once in 10 years, once in 40, whatever it is. But when you get it, it's pretty cool to be a part of and to be able to coach.
So I know at Van Nuys, I don't always get the most talented kids. I have had a lot. Luckily, I've gotten some kids with lots of heart and that work hard. And I know the same goes for you. Jason Moore wasn't exactly the most volleyball skilled kid when he came in the gym, but he came out player of the year, co-player of the year, I believe. So what are tryouts like at Chatsworth? I know you just got Jamal, who is a 6'4", 5", or maybe even taller, freshman.
Yeah.
So what are tryouts like at Chatsworth for boys or girls?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like any other school. Girls is much different than boys. And for boys, actually, that tryout that Jason Moore was a part of was my first tryout. And I think, you go through waves of you get some talent, you don't get some talent. But, when we saw Jason Moore, 6'3", and he's kind of touching almost the top of the backboard already. And it's like, you just kind of like pray that his grades are fine. And at the time, actually, Jason's grades were not. He was at a 1.4 cumulative for his freshman sophomore year. This is his junior year. And luckily he joined the team. He's catching balls during scrimmages and hitting it under the net. And it's a process. You'll get some athletic talent. Like Jamal Unukalu is one of them. But it's awesome to have that athleticism because you can't really coach some of that. But at the same time, it's hard to bring these guys or girls along that, are so raw to the sport. And, in Jason's case, he was a junior. You only got really a year and a half to kind of coach him up and kind of put the finished product out there. So in that sense, we get really lucky when we get some of those kids. Jamal's obviously a sophomore. But, with the boys over the years, it feels like it's getting harder to get boys into the gym. Obviously the first sport they look at is something like basketball or football. And, obviously it's different at every school. Some basketball coaches are okay with their kids playing different sports. Some girls basketball or girls softball coaches are not okay with it. So it kind of just really depends. I would say on average at the boys tryouts, we maybe get, 20 if we're lucky. But sometimes within that 20, you get 1 or 2 really good ones. And, you kind of piece that together with other guys that you've added over the years that, end up being a recipe for success. And then probably on the girls' side, we have more, probably around 80 or 90 total kids. Actually, that number's probably gone down because we're now moving kind of more towards the underclassmen tryout, because we'll have 10 or 15 seniors that will try out, but really, if you don't have experience, you're probably not making that team. So, and most of the kids obviously being kids from 8th grade coming into 9th grade. So it's definitely, similar to probably what everybody else has, but it's just the dynamic of sharing athletes from different teams and maybe kind of, getting lucky with 1 or 2 athletes here and there as well.
So when you came into Chatsworth, I know, your first boys tryout, you got Jason Moore. On the girls' side, you did have Mahalia White, who was an absolute phenom, who's killing it over at UC Davis.
Yeah.
So could you talk about what it was like coming in and coaching her, right from the start? It must have been, you kind of got lucky,
Well, you're lucky. I kind of knew what I was getting myself into as well. One thing, if you know about me, is I do my homework as much as possible. So, obviously that year in the West Valley, I actually was offered that job at Chatsworth that year too, 2014 when I went to Taft. And my, the AD, my good friend Jonathan Sheriff, had offered it to me, and I said, well, this is August, right? Our first game's in 2 weeks. I'm not going to get myself into something that I can't prepare for, right? I don't mind playing Granada and El Camino and TAP and all these teams. But if I only have 2 weeks to do it and it's short notice, obviously, we can't prepare the way that we want to prepare. So I didn't take the job that year. I ended up taking it the next year for the boys. And through that year that I was at TAP, we watched Chatsworth, and I'm like, this team has some talent. They've got some height. At the time, Kiana Landsman was their libero, who I coach as well. They had girls like Mahalia White, Sam Nunez. So I had an idea of what was there already. And I looked at Mahalia like she was just a raw talent. She was hitting the ball as hard as she could, but it wasn't quite going in the court. So when I got there at Chatsworth, one of my biggest priorities was developing her and making sure that she was on the right track, because the potential was there, right? She's an Andrea Bosnick type player. So, we got her into, a good club team. And it was really, I got really lucky in the sense that I got to coach a kid like that. The talent was there, but sometimes you have all the talent in the world, and if you don't have a driving force behind it, it's tough, right? And those are probably the most frustrating players to coach, because what they're capable of, and they don't quite get there all the time. So for her, I remember kind of after getting her into club and doing all those things, I remember I kind of made fun of her about her balance, because we couldn't really play her 6 rotations. She couldn't pass. She was always falling all over the place. And I kind of said, you're not very good at balancing. And I kind of poked the bear. And she said that night, actually, she texted me, Coach, I'm going to come to practice an hour early. We're going to work on balance, whatever it is you want to do. And as a coach, I was like, great. I don't have to tell you. You're showing up. Let's do it. So, when you have a kid that is already 6 feet, already kind of jumping out of the gym, she had just a really good arm swing. And then now she's willing to work on her weaknesses like that. And then not only that, but just an AP kid that has a 4.0 and the only conversations I've ever had with any of her teachers is, this young lady is phenomenal. So when you have someone like that, it just makes your job so much easier. All you got to really do is just kind of push them in the right direction, and then they do the rest, and obviously there's a lot of time that you got to spend, but to me, that's the easy part. Time is just time, right? But, dragging someone along the race and the finish line is a lot harder than just kind of helping out. So, it doesn't surprise me one bit, the success that she's had at UC Davis, and really just in anything that she does in her life, because her mom was just super motivating for her. Her senior year, her mom had breast cancer, and she kind of had to play with that. And, obviously when she went to UC Davis, and actually when she played club, she kind of asked me, hey, Coach, I really want to play in college. Can you coach me one season for club? I said, well, I never really wanted to get into it. I think you more than anybody knows, right? The amount of time that goes into coaching a boys program and a girls program. And, and at the time I wasn't teaching, but it's still a lot of time. So to take on a club team was really tough, but, and then just to see, teams like Butler and Villanova and UC Riverside and CSUN and UC Davis going after her was cool and awesome. And so when she got there, she was, killing it her freshman year, and she ended up being Big West freshman of the year. And she would text me, I'm having back pain. And I'm just thinking, she's just getting set a lot, and it's just her transition from high school to, Division I volleyball that's kind of hurting her. And she ended up going in to check it out, and she ended up having stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, it breaks your heart to hear a kid working her butt off to achieve her dream, and then to have that just kind of thrown on you, right? Especially with what's going on with your mom. And, like in Mahalia fashion, she took it head on. She battled it. She, still maintained a 4.0 in college as she was battling through that. And, this past year was her first year coming back from that. So I'm just super proud and lucky to have had the chance to coach a kid like that. And, it makes it tougher, because you're not really going to find many kids like that. So, the bar is set pretty high. But just obviously very fortunate and happy to have coached her and been a part of her journey.
We talk about Mahalia, and she was absolutely great on the girls' side. On the boys' side, I know you had success with Grant DeGrasse. His brother Garrett DeGrasse also played at Chatsworth, but I know he and I was I think he was my year too, so we kind of played against each other. But he was definitely a driving force on that team. Can you talk a little bit about what his experience was like?
Yeah, so the DeGrasse family is just one of those volleyball families. You talk about Taft, and they had a Norze here and there, right? For Chatsworth, it's actually over the years it was the Pates. Back in the 2000s, they had Robert Pate, Will Pate, and the DeGrasses had three brothers. Garrett being the first one. He played in 2014 on a team that was one of the top in the city with Carson that year. And he was all city, 2-3 years in a row. The dad had a kind of a club team that they put together. And, when Grant was 14 or 15, he's playing with his older brother at, 17, 18. And then you got Cooper, who's the youngest one, in the crib that's watching all this happen. So, and he was actually the tallest one of all of them. So he ended up, playing for me as well. But Grant was just one of those guys. His junior year when I started, he was my starting setter. He was an all-city setter, and just he understood everything about the game. What it took to win, how loud and how into everyone's face you need to get to be a good leader. And then obviously the volleyball was just the bonus, right? But to have a leader of that caliber was just phenomenal. And from his junior year to his senior year, we had a really good setter in Eric Lee on JV, and I had to make a tough decision and a risky decision to move an all-city setter to a different position because that's what the team needed at that time. But he ended up being one of the best outside hitters in the city, and I think we played you guys that year, and you got to see it firsthand that he knew what it took for the team to be successful. And I'll tell you, the first day of off season, he showed up in the gym 3-4 hours just working on his approach. I mean, he wasn't the greatest outside when we started, right? But through all of his things that he's learned over the years with his dad's club team and what we were doing, he became such a phenomenal player and leader, and really just kind of the glue to that 2016. Actually, this team right behind me, that was just so fun to watch. And I keep in contact with Grant, Cooper. That's kind of one of my biggest things, is making sure to stay in touch with those people that have been so influential in our program as well.
In 2016, I was a senior at Van Nuys High School. We played Grant DeGrasse, Jason Moore, Juan. It was a great squad. You guys were the D2 champions. During the Chatsworth tournament, you guys were the favorite to win. We played you guys in pool play, and back then there was no tiebreaker third set. It was only the two sets, and you guys had won the first one. You won the first one. You lost the second one. I know your team wasn't particularly happy about that one, considering, with all due respect, we weren't the absolute greatest team. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so sometimes you talk about seasons and like turning points within the season. I think that was a turning point for us that season. We've talked about this before in that game. We held ourselves in a high regard, right? And you guys kind of were good. One thing about Van Nuys is you guys always play with fire, right? And that's kind of like one of the most dangerous things, right? You play with this fire and this energy, and sometimes it just it catches on fire and it just bursts into flames, right? And that's kind of what you guys did in that set. And you guys are fired up, we're hitting out, right? And we're kind of making errors. And you said the guys were mad. I was very mad about the game, but so we kind of had a team talk that tournament. We ended up kind of coming back. I kind of challenged Jason Moore a little bit. You're better than this. And sure enough, we saw you guys back in the final. I think that night was your prom night too. So we ended up playing you guys back in the final, playing a much better game. We went to Vegas, kind of figured ourselves out, played a lot of teams from different places as well. And that year we played Eagle Rock in the championship, who had beaten us up pretty good the year before, and that was just super rewarding to not only beat them but like sweep them, because Eagle Rock, Tim Bergeron team is not a team that's just going to get beat like that, right? So for us to have played so well, right? I think kind of all those things leading up to that helped. And sure enough, that year we went to state and played. I believe it was Burroughs High School, who had like 2 or 3 Division I guys on their team. We ended up, going up 2-0. I think at the time, Coach Mercado came to help out, and Coach Renee as well. And it was just super fun experience to be a part of, and a lot of our guys weren't really sure if we were going to win. We went up 2-0. Sure enough, they came back and we lost the 5th set, but just, those experiences that kind of go through the season, kind of help shape, how you become a team. And, that's kind of one of those experiences that helped us, get into one of the most exciting games that I've been a part of.
Grant DeGrasse actually went on to play at Pierce College. He won a state championship with other city section kids, Jason Moore, Cole Chia, Morgan Wadlow. Can't think of any more, but I'm pretty sure there might be others. But you've had this kind of line of success with your kids. Kari Osborne going to play at Springfield. I know Alex Farkas has taken his turn at Pierce now. Joey as well. Joey Gomez, yeah. He's taking his turn at Pierce as well. Kids seem to be, having success at Chatsworth High School. What's the secret?
I think one of the biggest things at Chatsworth is I try to run it as much as a college program as we can. Obviously, we don't do college things, but when the kids are engaged in regular workouts, the kids are engaged in a study hall that we have to partake in to make sure that we're doing the right things in the classroom. When you go to college, you have study hall, you have workouts, and I think probably the biggest thing is making sure the kids see what college volleyball looks like, so whether that be go to a CSUN game or watch it on YouTube, or even inviting some college guys to your gym so they can see firsthand what that is like. And then they kind of make that decision on their own. Like, this is something that I want to do, and as much as I like to say, like, I force them to do it, I mean, it has to come from within, right? That's the biggest driving purpose. So I think for those guys, they kind of have seen guys that are older than them do that, and that motivates them, just like, city championships. And it happens on both sides, probably more so on the boys side for us, because, some of our boys come back more versus the girls who kind of go out of state for their colleges and whatnot. But yeah, I think them watching each other and kind of developing that, like, hey, there's guys from our program that go play in college, that inspires them to want to do the same. And when they get there, hopefully they have all the tools to succeed because they've gone through our program and kind of understand that that's something that's normal at the next level.
2019, your girls season was, I'm trying to think of the word to describe it, but it was definitely one.
Crazy.
Crazy is one word that could describe it. Yeah. I don't know if you want to go into details, but if you could explain what was the 2019 season like and how did you get through it?
Yeah. So I think you got to start with the 2018 season to kind of get some context that, 2018 was my first group from freshman to senior that we graduated. I think we had 10 seniors, and that was, we went to, open, we unfortunately lost to Palisades, which is not really that big of a deal when they have a girl by the name of Alex Laeda just killing it and going to Oregon. And then we were fortunate to go to state and get our first program state win that we've ever had. But then to graduate 10 girls from that team and, 3 or 4 great leaders like Kelly Landsman and Chelsea Almeida, we felt like, okay, we might have to rebuild. We might have to assess kind of our team and what we're doing. And, one of our returners was our all-city setter. And unfortunately, as we went through the 2019 season, we had to incorporate a lot of young freshmen that were turning sophomores. And, at first glance, we thought, okay, this is going to be a rebuild, but then sure enough, we're going 5 with Taft, who's the top team in the city, losing, unfortunately. And then the next game going to 5 with Granada, who's another top team in the city, with primarily freshmen, sophomores, and maybe 1 or 2 juniors here and there. So we assessed, okay, this is, still a good chance for us to be successful. We want to play an open, I know that there's been years that we've gone open or Division 1, but our goal is always to make the open and play with the best of the best. So I think that whole season ended up being a lot harder for some of those girls, because the expectations changed. And then you kind of tie that in with probably some girl drama that I'm sure no girls coach is unfamiliar with from their seasons, which ended up resulting in one of our 3-year captain, quitting and transferring in the middle of the season. And that was, I want to say, that the most challenging thing that I've probably gone through as a coach. I can deal with us not being good. I can deal with us being very good and having a target on our back. But, to have your starting setter quit on the team 2 weeks before you're going to go into playoffs is definitely something I've never thought about, even going through. So, and then not only that, but now you go through the question of, okay, what's next, right? And I think at the time, what's next was my starting middle was ineligible. I think her replacement that was coming in was also ineligible. So you just think about all these things that are going wrong and how do we figure that out? So, we ended up moving some girls up from JV. And the hardest part was probably having setters come into the fold that have, for a long time, for 3 years, played behind another girl, right? And who have maybe lost the motivation that I'm going to be the starter, or, going to be the girl that, the team's going to. So that was a challenge, but, we ended up kind of losing a couple games at the end, falling into Division 1. And having this run where, I'm not going to lie, it was very hard. There's a couple practices where girls are breaking down and crying, and you got to just tear down the nets and have a team talk. There's a couple of those moments that we went through. And sure enough, the girls, I think, one of my biggest messages to the girls that year was, things sometimes have to get worse before they get better. I think even you look at what's going on right now with the current society is like, sometimes things need to get a little worse before change happens and things get better. And I think the team bonded a little bit more after all that craziness that happened. And, we were very fortunate to kind of make it to the finals and play a team like Venice with Coach Raul and, the legendary Alan Hunt. And it was exciting. We weren't expecting to really be there. We were there. That was a team that we beat 3-0 with our, a team that we had fully. And then now to have a setter and a whole brand new team that has trained for maybe 3-4 weeks to be in a city championship, is a game of inches. And, fortunately we were able to come out on top, and I credit our fans. It's already very crazy to play in a city championship, but, when it's in the Valley in Birmingham and you have, 400, 500, 600, Chatsworth people going crazy, a 5-setter becomes a little bit easier because, you kind of have your fans behind you, and just fortunate to kind of win and, be able to beat a really good team like Venice.
If you haven't checked that game out, go on my YouTube channel. I recorded the whole game for you guys. I'm going to pick your brain a little more. I know in this past girl season, you guys went to 5 with Taft and Granada back to back. What were those games like, and what was the deciding factor?
Yeah, I mean, they're tough. Anytime you lose in 5 as a coach, you beat yourself up because you just try to think of what could have gone differently. When we played Taft, they were the best team in the city, I thought, at the moment. They're 6-1, 6-2 across the board. Coach Mercado's already a wizard to figure out what's going on the other side of the net. And, we weren't as, tall, as talented, but we did some things very well. And, anytime you have a young team, inconsistency is one of the biggest things, right? And, when you're on, you're on, and when you're off, right? And when we go down 0-2, or sorry, I think it was 1-1, and then we went down 1-2, we kind of just started serving pretty tough. And girls is way different in the sense that, one serve can make or break a team sometimes, because the passing is so much harder. So we got very fortunate, couple serving runs here and there. But, when you get to a 5th set, the ball is going to find the go-to hitters. And, unfortunately, I think they just had better go-to hitters than us. Not to say that our players are not good, but, when you have a Shelby Roloff, who's just, one of the best in the city. It's kind of tough to contain. You can only dig her so many times, so. And then with Granada, it was a fiery match. I think we had a ref who I won't mention, but, ended up, giving out a couple yellow cards. And, for me, I'm super involved with my coaching, and I stand up and I'm engaged and trying to keep the kids engaged. And, I think at the time we were up 2-1 by the time I had to sit, and we ended up losing in 5. And I just, at the time, I think they were running a 2 ball, and I'm calling out two, and all my girls are calling out, and we take a lot of pride in preparing for those things. And I think the ref said, "Oh, you're challenging for a double," and I got a card. I had to sit down. Tom Harp got a card right after that for I don't even know what. So I'm not to say that the card was the reason we lost. I think their team was a little bit better. They had some great pins. And we came up short. But, like I said, with a young team, you ride the wave sometimes, and sometimes you crash on the wave. And I think, they finished off on that last run. And, volleyball is a game of runs. And, sometimes you finish on one or you don't. So I think that's kind of, the challenging part. But hopefully those kids will, learn from those experiences and build on that for next year.
In 2017, you guys played Silmar in the, LA Division I quarterfinals, right? And you guys were down in the 5th set, right? It was a tough match. I think it's on YouTube. And it, the door was closing on you guys, and somehow you managed to pull through. Could you explain that story to us?
Yeah, so I mean, we've played Silmar while I've been at Chatsworth a number of times, and with Sohail Mashoud, who obviously isn't at Silmar any longer, with Lertzman that's there now. We've had some battles, and that's probably one of the more recent ones. I would even say this kind of starts back in 2015 or 16. With we were at the Venice tournament. They had at the time Morgan Wadlow, who was a phenomenal player, went to play at Pierce College, won a state championship with those guys. And we just had battles where, we'd go to the 3rd set in the championship of the Venice game, and we were down 14-10, 14-12. We managed to come back and win 16-14. The next year, we saw those same guys, same story, couple questionable calls. We won 18-16. And then it just gets capped off in 2017, where it's like, okay, this is our year at Silmar, and they had beaten us 2-0, and we were pretty confident that we felt like we were the better team. We had beaten them earlier in the season, but they had just 2 senior outsides that were just studly. I can't even really remember their names, but they just were not making hitting errors, right? And so we were fortunate, won the 3rd set. 4th set, we win. We go to a 5th set. We're at Chatsworth, and it's, I think the biggest thing for high school kids is the experience of a playoff match, right? To be, in a gym at 7:00 with hundreds of fans. It's your school, it's your community, your friends are there, your families are there. You can't replicate that. And, we were super fortunate to be at home, because I don't know if that game would have gone the same way if we weren't. And we were down, I think it's like 12-6 or something, 14-10, something like that. And, we get into a rotation where I have a JV kid coming in to serve. And not to say I didn't have trust in him, but, to have all the hopes on a JV kid serve, as row 6 was crazy. I look at Alex, because he's given areas, and, he's kind of, not sure. So he goes back to serve. We win a point, we win another one, and these outsides who are just destroying us all game, haven't made an error. They finally make like their first error of their whole match, and they're hitting in the net. They got blocked one time, and sure enough, we catch up to them at 14s. We're still going back and forth. I think we end up winning like 17-15 in that match. And that was just kind of our young group that just kind of like, I think that was their moment where they figured like, wow, we are, we can succeed if we kind of put this all together. Sure enough, we go to the semifinals. Next game, we play Palisades, with one of the many years that we play Palisades and lose. But, that was kind of a really awesome. And we've just had so many battles with Silmar that, I really value those games and, those experiences the kids have had.
In 17, 18, and 19, you had the you were lucky enough to play Palisades, a team as good as Palisades, in the semifinals and the finals. Akil Tangator, Justin Howard, Miles Partain, Marcus Partain. Uh, Absolute crazy volleyball players, once in a lifetime players, I believe, at a school like Palisades, even though they have a long line of success. What was it like playing teams like those year after year after year?
Yeah, well, I mean, year after year, our season ended from Palisades, and it's kind of, I for people that watch college volleyball, it's like Long Beach State, right? When they had TJ DeFalco and Josh Tweedy, you're just kind of waiting for those guys to graduate because they're just phenomenal talents. And I think I remember in 2016, we were watching Palisades versus El Camino in the city championship. And obviously El Camino came out on top, but it was Akil and Mark, it was all those guys freshman year. And I remember some of my JV kids were with us on that trip because they got moved up, and they were looking at that and said, Coach, these guys are good, man. Like, they're freshmen, they're sophomores. And I said, well, yeah, but don't be surprised if we're playing them in the finals one year. And they said, and at the time, it's a JV kid who's barely learning the game. So for us, it's kind of, we always knew how good they were. And yeah, it's once in a lifetime kind of talent to have. I tell the guys it's 4 to 5 Division I volleyball players on one high school team, and it's, when you think about high school sports, you think about like guys that have went pro from NBA or gone to play in college. But that's kind of just unheard of. And so it's, and Carlos did a really, really great job with those guys. I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he did with that team. It's one thing to have just all this talent, but it's another thing to manage it and make sure that it's getting better over the years, which they definitely did. And it was just, it's fun for me as a competitor. It's just fun to see the highest level of all, and when you talk about the best teams, you want to say that you played them and, went to battle with them and whatnot. So, I've joked with Coach Mercado about this, that, on any other given year, like for example, 2018, that was probably one of my best boys teams that I've ever had, but they won't be called city champions because of the team that they had to play, right? And, you only have to be as good as the team that you have to beat that year, right? For example, as us, I think El Camino had a couple of years where they were really phenomenal, and just you ran up against one of the best teams that you've seen in a really long time. So it's disheartening in the sense that you won't get that achievement, but also pretty cool because you got to play one of the best teams. Of, you talk about Akil going to UCI, Justin who went to Ohio State, both Partain brothers going to UCLA. So it's just, crazy, but, obviously there were battles that we enjoyed a lot as we went through them.
I know Coach Gray over at Palisades does a great job with the boys and the girls programs. Could you take us through what a typical week is like in terms of Chatsworth volleyball practices when it comes to, it's Granada week, or like you said, Taft and then Granada week? That must be so stressful. What's that week like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of depends on the time of the season. If we're playing Taft and Granada in the beginning of the season, I'm not so worried about what's going on the other side of the net. I may be more so concerned about what's going on with us, because this, as you go through a season, you kind of need to figure out yourself, your identity, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And until you kind of figure that stuff out, you can't really worry about the other side. When I first started coaching, there were some games that I just scouted the other side and planned, and next thing you know, we can't serve or pass. And when you can't do that, you're not going to win very many games, because those are things that are under your control. So if it's the end of the season, we're starting to gear up towards playoffs. We start looking at the other side, start figuring out kind of what matchups we like or don't like, and what our emphasis or focus is on. We'll probably spend an hour just kind of doing our normal ball control, figuring out kind of, our rhythm. Next hour, we'll probably scout, talk about what they do, what they like to do, what we're looking for, and then probably just put it as much into gameplay as we can for the last hour, half hour, as we can. You try to keep it light, but at the same time, you don't want to be underprepared, for a team that that you're going to have to bring your A game to beat. And try to minimize as much as we can. So, I can let the kids go home, because volleyball is not the only thing that they do in their life. They got to get their homework done. They got to get their chores done, whatever it is. So trying to make sure that they're mentally prepared for what's going to happen that week is also important as we go through it.
You've witnessed some great players come from other schools: Granada Hills, Adi Fishman, Drake Youth, ECR Cole Chia. You play these guys on the daily. Could you let us know what are some boys teams, some girls teams, the best you've seen during your tenure?
Yeah. So when you think, let's start with the girls at least. I probably the team or one of the teams that sticks out to me the most is probably the Granada Hills teams over the years with Sina Aghassy. She was a 4-year starter. She was 6'1" her freshman year, lefty. So actually, when I was at Poly, we had played her in the semifinals in 2014, I believe. And so I got the privilege of playing Sina Aghassy for all 4 years. And luckily in 2017, I believe, with my girls team, we were able to beat them in 5. So, I mean, that was probably like one of the most, exciting moments is like you beat one of the best players that's come out of the city section. Taft had some great teams. We talked about Bosnick over the years. Even San Pedro, way back in the day in the early 2000s had some really good teams as well. On the boys side, you got to start with probably that Palisades team, 18, 19, 17. To have 4 or 5 Division I guys, you can't really match that. They went deep into the state playoffs as well, and I don't think many of our boys teams have done that over the years. And then you kind of think about, even teams like El Camino, 2016 with Colche, he went to Pierce and, won a state championship over there. And actually, there's just that group of guys that won city championships and state championships. Carson had a really good team, 2014, with Jordan Molina. And actually, I think Jordan Molina is one of the few players, this is kind of unknown fact, that he won a city championship at Carson, a state championship at Long Beach Community College, and then won a national championship at Long Beach State. So it's kind of like, you don't see 3 championships won at 3 levels for a player. So they were a great team as well. And then just kind of looking back, I'd probably say I'd go farther back in like the 2000s when you had Chatsworth winning 4 championships in a row. Like that for me, when you say dynasty, that's like the first thing that comes up. You win 1 or 2 in a row, okay, but 3 or 4, that's a big deal. And like I said, I'll walk into the gym and look at the names up on the wall. You think about a guy like Paul George, who was Player of the Year in 2000, and then Robert Pate, who for those of you guys who don't know Robert Pate, just a phenomenal outside hitter. He's one of the only guys that I know that had a chance to go Division I in 2 sports. He had scholarship offers in soccer and in volleyball, and he ended up going with soccer. But he won 4 championships, was Player of the Year 2 or 3 years out of that 0 to 04 years. So just some phenomenal teams that we've had over the years, and phenomenal players. Just because you're a phenomenal player doesn't mean you're on a phenomenal team. You have like a Arvis Green, who's just a Division I talent, but he didn't necessarily play on, the greatest teams those years maybe. So, some really good players. And, the city section, I think we're really proud of just developing some of those guys or girls and being a part of their journey, like I said, with Mahalia, and seeing them blossom and grow into, just phenomenal people and players.
I'll definitely have to get that Jordan Molina story from Gerald and Ralph once they come on the pod, because you guys are definitely coming on the pod if you're watching. You once told me a really good story about Paul George. Could you tell that story for everyone to hear?
Yeah, so Paul George is just one of those mythical creatures at Chatsworth that people just talk so highly of. For those who don't know Paul George, he won the city championship at Chatsworth in 2000, Player of the Year, lefty, 6'4", 5 oppo. Ended up getting a full scholarship to UCLA to play volleyball. And so one of the stories that I've heard was they're, won the championship. They're getting fitted for their rings. And coach comes up to Paul. Hey, Paul, what size is your ring, right? And he looks at him and says, I don't want a ring, coach. What? I mean, you worked so hard for this, right? You're the Player of the Year. Come on, you want a ring. He says, no, I don't want it. He goes, why? Well, I'm going to UCLA and I'm going to get a ring there. So, what? Like, you're just going to know that you're going to get a ring? I mean, city championship, okay, but a national championship's a big deal, right? So sure enough, Paul went to UCLA his freshman year. Freshman year is a big struggle, didn't play. Sophomore year, he worked his butt off, tried to get on the court, still nothing. I think on his junior year, he got some playing time, got hurt, and, obviously couldn't play. And then his senior year, started on the bench, I think, kind of made his way into the starting lineup. That year, they made it to the Final Four, won the national championship with him playing, and he ended up fulfilling his dream. And for me, it's like, how can you know that you're going to do that, and it kind of just goes to show, like, that drive will get you where you want to go. So that's just a legendary, when you're that confident in yourself, things happen. And I think that's a story that I share with my kids and obviously you. And, it's one of those things that you'll never read on or watch in a film. You just kind of hear those stories, and it's legendary.
You mentioned a young core that you've got with your girls team. Could you let us know who they are and what kind of strengths they have?
Yeah, so at least with 2019 season, I think probably the biggest surprise that we had that was not bad was a girl by the name of Geraldine Martinez. Uh, she came in her freshman year. We kind of knew about Geraldine because she had an older sister that played in our program, but we didn't know how good she would be. And so her freshman year, she kind of worked her way onto the varsity team. We weren't sure if she was going to play, maybe ride the bench. We weren't sure what her role was going to be. And every day, every week, she just got better and better and better. And, it's kind of like one of those things that's like sometimes when you're coaching and coaching, it just seems like sometimes the kids are not understanding. But it seemed like every word, every, feedback that I gave her, she was just taking it in and growing and getting better from it. So, she ended up being kind of one of our best players. She played 6 rotations. She ended up being the player of the year as a freshman, which, was a little concerning because after that, it's kind of like, what else can you do? But she's still growing. She's still getting better. She had a really good club season before everything ended. We have a girl by the name of Imani Taylor, who was a sophomore last year. Who kind of was, actually one of her idols is Mahalia White. When we watch film, she looks at her and says, that's what I want to be. Right. And, it's very hard to look at that and replicate it, but, she was so motivated and wanted to, get better because of, the idol and goal that she put for herself. So we kind of moved her to middle at the end of the season because of all the stuff that was going on. But, we're hoping to keep her on a pin and, hopefully she might be one of the next ones that we might, get to see play in college. And then, we've got kind of a string of juniors that have been in the program for a long time, with Madison Noji, who's our libero, Sydney Lee, who's also been our libero over the years. And with those two, with Beniza Rabaha, a lot of other girls, we have a good little core coming back that hopefully we can add to. Obviously setting is kind of a position where we got to figure out some things as well. We graduated our senior, Riley Gonzalez, who we're going to have to kind of fill her role. But just kind of, really excited to see how some of these young players develop, and whether that be an open Division I, whatever division it's going to be in, or whenever our season starts, we're hoping to, get back after it. And we hope that everybody's going to be super motivated. So, we're going to hit the ground running.
Armin Mercado, Tim Bergeron, of course, you, David Che, all great names in the coaching world. Could you let us know what are your, what's your list of favorite coaches that you admire, coaches that you've learned things over the years?
Yeah, so I mean, let me just start by saying there's just some great coaches in the city section. I personally feel like they might not get the recognition they deserve, maybe because your team is not great. And I think this is something that gets lost in translation a lot is, is a good coach because of how good their team is, or because of how they've developed their teams over the years? And I think this is something that I've probably paid attention to a lot over the years, is kind of distinguishing the difference between the two. You'll start with Coach Mercado. You have 20 years, 30 years at Taft, and he's done it year after year. And there's years where they're not very good, but it seems like he figures it out more than most. And Tim Bergeron, when I first started coaching, I was in Mercado's ear a lot. I was in Tim's ear a lot. And if you know Tim Bergeron, he can talk volleyball for hours and hours and hours. And that's probably one of my favorite things about Tim is, he can talk for days, and, and I'll eat it up. I love talking volleyball like that. And then, you talk about some of the veterans that have just been in the city for a long time, the Will Reinhardts, the Tom Harps, just people that have been doing this for a long time, the Lertzmans, that have kind of paved the way for some of the younger coaches, and those guys are super influential. And, like I mentioned, Carlos, and I think something that our coaches do really well in the city section is just kind of turning players that have never really, played the sport into, phenomenal volleyball players, and sometimes you get fortunate with some, but sometimes you have to develop. And I think, some of those coaches have done that really well, and they come from every league. Jason Carbonell's been over there at Canoga for many, many years as well. So just some phenomenal coaches that we have. And sometimes I even think to myself, like, if I were to assemble my dream team coaching staff, what would that, entail? And I would say it's probably a lot of coaches from the city section.
Tim Bergeron will be on the podcast sometime soon. Be warned, it may go on for like 4 hours, but that's okay because every single word of what Tim says, I love to hear. And Sina will agree as well. Every single thing that Tim says has reason behind it. And it's just really fun talking to him. You learn a lot. He's got a lot in that big brain of his. So I can't wait to talk to him. What was the biggest win of your career versus the city school? And what was the biggest disappointing loss versus the city school?
That's a good question. I haven't, I don't really think about that because, it changes over the years, and, you don't like to value one win more than another. I think the easy pick could be like a city championship, but, sometimes they aren't the biggest because, when you go into a city championship, you're expecting to win, you're hoping to win, right? And, you could look at our 2019 girls game and be like, that was a 5-setter, and I think that was crazy for its own reasons because of all the things that we went through. But probably biggest win, and for me, it's kind of more so deals with you weren't supposed to win, right? Probably the one that you could point to most recently is probably the Cleveland versus Taft, 8-1. Like, nobody saw Cleveland winning. So, maybe if you ask Jeff Laidlaw that question, that might be his. But for me, it probably would, for the girls' side, I'd point to that 2017 season where we beat Granada Hills with Sarah Haggy in her senior year, right? I thought to myself, I'm just kind of going to wait till she graduates to get a win against Granada. And we were fortunate, and that was Mahalia's senior year too. That year was very fun to watch in the city section, and actually in the West Valley League. You had Sarah Haggy, who went to Grand Canyon, Mahalia, who went to UC Davis, Kashana Williams, who went to Long Beach State in Nebraska. Excuse me. And then Lauren Anderson, who went to CSUN as well from there. So that year, I think Mahalia had, like an Andrea Bosnick type performance with 44 kills or 45 kills in 5 sets to win. So that to me was huge because we were not expecting something like that. And then on the boys' side, I'd probably say 2018, that team that obviously ran up on the boys' side against Palisades. We went to Vegas that year. And, over the years, we go to Vegas and we start to figure out some of the best teams and just kind of like the West Coast, because there's a lot of schools from Nevada, Utah, Arizona, California. And one of the teams from Arizona that's just, always winning state championships down there is Brophy College Prep. And we got seeded that year. I kind of put that we were going to be pretty good, but the director didn't believe me. So they put us as a 2 seed with Brophy the first day. And so we end up playing this team who I think has like a 6'10" setter that went to UCSB, 6'5" outside that went to Princeton. So that year our talk was, how are we going to beat Palisades? Well, we can beat two guys that are going Division 1. Eventually we'll get to 3 or 4. And we somehow managed to sweep that team that I think 27-25, 25-23. And just the guys, we're all just 6'1", 6'2" to beat this humongous team. And that's not the only tall guy. Like, everybody on that team was tall and good. So that was, it was pretty heated. It was in the small gym. It was hot, and we were able to come out with that win. So that one sticks out in my memory. It's just kind of one of the, you weren't supposed to win it, but it felt pretty damn good after you got that win.
So I know Chatsworth has some amazing assistant coaches. I know for a fact Pepe is a great guy. Alex Sanchez, great guy. Kiana Landsman, she's amazing. And also your support staff. What's their growth been like with you along all these years?
Yeah, so I mean, in the beginning, I started out coaching with Pepe, who, we went to high school together. We've been best friends. He's coached my JV teams. And, the hard part of coaching is it's not something that's very stable, right? You can't, work a job and coach. The hours don't quite add up, right? So with Pepe, he was such a phenomenal coach. Just the kids love being around him. And everything that I know, Pepe knows. So it wasn't ever a moment of, I need to tell Pepe to do something differently. It's just kind of, he knows how to do it. And personally, I just enjoyed being part of the journey of every season with him. There's so many ups and downs, and you want to be a part of, those ups and downs with people you enjoy being with. So, at some point for him, he ended up saying, I got to go get a big boy job and start making some money and doing this. And, fortunately, he's in real estate now, doing very well. So, that's awesome. And, it's not like that's the end of it. He still kind of comes around, helps out as much as he can. With Alex, he kind of came in as Pepe was transitioning out. He went to Notre Dame and Pierce, and we kind of met through some open gyms. And he, his background's a little different, right? So it was a little bit of meshing and trying to figure out kind of how he is. And he's developed so much as a coach, as a person. And, the kids just love him as well. I've gotten very, very lucky to have some people that, the kids in the program love to be around and, inspired to be like. So it's been super fortunate to have someone as committed as Alex. And this for basically no pay, right? Because when you calculate, and that's probably the worst thing about coaching is, or at least in LAUSD, there's just this flat rate. You put in your hours, you can calculate how much you get per hour. But if you want to be good, you want to be great, you have to put in more hours. And the more hours you put, the lower that number per hour gets, right? So nobody's doing this for the money. Like I think Will said, you really have to have this passion to be around kids and want to, help them become better players and, people. And, and I think with Kiana and Juan and even Kelly, they played for me. And now for them to want to come back and coach, it's really, really cool to see that, because that obviously means as a coach, you've done something and you've developed a culture where people want to come back and want to be a part of it, which is awesome. And they have all, succeeded on the court. Now they're succeeding off the court, being mentors for some of these kids, bringing them along. So that's been super awesome. And obviously, I'm a firm believer that the more people you have involved in something, the more meaningful it makes for everybody, right? So, and just like teaching, it's like the more teachers you have in the classroom, the more you're going to get out of some of these kids, because it's more one-on-one that you can get. So we've been super fortunate to be able to have a coaching staff like that at Chatsworth. And, and I try to keep that in perspective for some programs or some of our players, that some programs don't have that luxury, right? The person that I think about the most is like a guy like Tim Bergeron, who's at Eagle Rock, coaching 5 teams by himself. I call him Superman, because I don't know how he does it. There's years where I coach 2 teams by myself and just tapping out and, gasping for air. But, to see how he does that, and then to be successful, winning his first Open Championship against Palisades last year. He's a legendary coach, and, my hat's off to him.
I won't forget to mention Eagle Rock's big gym was actually being renovated this past year. So all their sports teams had to share one small gym. And if you've been in Eagle Rock small gym, that's not an ideal place to play.
Yeah.
The ceiling's really low. The floor is kind of scuffy. So to be able to pull that off, I think is an amazing thing. You mentioned Gunnar Welch, 4-year player, spectacular guy. I've met him, really nice kid. Luis, explain what their growth has been like over their years in the program. I know Luis wasn't a 4-year player, but he equally had as much to do with Chatsworth volleyball.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start with Luis, with his role kind of changing over the years at Chatsworth. I mean, he started his sophomore year. He actually didn't speak much English. He immigrated here, started his sophomore year, and actually his sophomore year in JV, there's another kid that also didn't speak a lot of English, and they were speaking Spanish to each other on the court. And at the time, Juan was coaching them on JV and was yelling at them, speaking English so everybody can hear. And so his adjustment to the country, the school, the sport was huge. He's probably one of the fastest kids that I've ever coached. Sometimes the kids will go out to the blacktop and he's smoking everybody. And at the time, Mark Lee, who was a 4-year, or 3-year at the time, starter, won a championship his freshman year, was an all-city libero captain. He ended up abruptly having to go back home to Korea for some family issues. And, this was a 2019 actually year. And I had no idea what to do. I was panicking, I'm freaking out. And, with the case last year, someone quitting, that's different. Someone having to leave, okay. So I had a senior that was on the team already that I knew could do it, but then I, wanted to give Luis that opportunity. So I kind of shot him a text that night, and I said, Luis, I'm thinking of moving you up to varsity, because of what's happened. But I know I'm ready to give you 110% every single day. And after I heard that, I knew that he was going to be, a guy that, had the drive, had the force. So he ended up beating out the senior that year, becoming the starting libero. Just kind of had a phenomenal year that year. And it's junior year senior year not end up happening because of how hard he worked. And then with Gunnar, it was, it's every year he just progressed a little bit. And then from sophomore to junior year, a lot, because he came into a starting role. And then his senior year, because kind of wanted to be the captain, wanted to be the leader, the go-to guy. I think we had Farkas the year before. He wanted to be that guy, and he was becoming that guy. And, he obviously couldn't do that, but I'm super thrilled to know that he's going to go play in college at Simpson. And that's something that he wanted to do. He wanted to play club volleyball with me this past year, and, wanted to try to take his talents to play at the next level, like, Kari Osborne did and some of these other guys. So super, super happy to know that he's still going to play. And now that he's an alumni, the doors are always open. Luis, the doors are always open, for them to come back, share their stories, and, continue the tradition.
I want to move into a little bit of SoCal Legends. So SoCal Legends is a club you started recently. You got through your first seasons with the boys and the girls. What was going through your mind when you first decided you wanted to start a club?
Yeah, so, I mean, creating SoCal Legends and just a club in general was something that I kind of always dreamed about when I was kind of playing. And it's kind of threefold. I guess the first reason kind of stems from me in high school, especially for the boys. There's never really, and even for the girls, there's never really a club that's just in the valley, right? When I played club, I played for SMBC. You had to drive out to North Hollywood and Harvard Westlake and go practice over there. It's a 30, 40-minute drive sometimes with traffic. So, I think the biggest thing was to offer something in the valley for the kids that live here, and they don't have to drive across the whole, LA to kind of figure out a good club. So that was one thing, is to try to make sure that the kids in the valley had something. Another reason, being that to, have good players, they have to play some club to kind of get that exposure, get to the next level. And one of my biggest things was pushing players to play club. And, I can't express how guilty I felt sometimes pushing a kid to play for a club and them coming back and telling me, they had one of the worst experiences, right? Or they hated it, or they wasted X amount of dollars there. So another reason being that we wanted to provide our kids, any kids, just something that they're maybe more familiar with. Obviously, if I'm pushing them to play club, if they know that the coaches that are there, they know kind of what's going on at that club, or the parents feel more comfortable with that. So that was kind of another reason. And then also just kind of, like I mentioned before, coaching in LAUSD in the city section, it doesn't come with a really big paycheck, right? So, with the club, there's a little bit more flexibility of being able to get the coaches a little bit more of what they deserve. I mean, I don't want to say what they deserve because that's probably a lot more than what I can offer, but being able to compensate them a little bit more for what they do, so now I can give Alex a team and say, hey, I'm able to kind of get you this. So that was another reason. And, obviously just building something in the Valley, a lot of times I see, kids in the Valley going to SGLE and driving all the way to Pasadena, but if we were to kind of keep what we have in the Valley, um, I feel like there would be a really good product. When I played club, it was a kid from Chatsworth, a kid from Granada, a kid from Taft, and it's like, we were kind of like the city section team, right? Or we were a twos team at the time, and like the city section reject, and we relished the opportunity to go play up against some of these guys that play at some of these prestigious schools and beat them. So that's kind of also something. And then last, probably just elevating the level of play where we are. You go to Orange County, the volleyball level is, up here, head and shoulders above, everywhere else that you see. So, I'm not going to say that we're going to be at that level, but hopefully moving towards that direction and giving kids in the city the opportunity to be able to play at that level and hopefully close the gap and make it a little bit more competitive.
Gunnar Welch, Luis Gomez. I know Jake Stanley from my team, Ben Martinez from Taft, all played on your 18s team. What was their first season like?
Yeah, so I mean, when I started up the club, I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be. Was it going to be 6, 7 teams? We're high level. I was honestly okay with just having one team and just kind of having something where we just get better and have fun with it. We ended up having 2 teams on the boys' side, 4 teams on the girls' side. And with our boys' 18s team, you kind of just show up, we go through qualifying and, in the boys club, there's about, I want to say 100, 150 teams. And they kind of just put you in qualifying to see kind of where you place with everybody. And, our first tournament, we ended up beating one of the top seeded teams in Wave from San Diego. And that kind of took a lot of people in the club, setting by surprise. And we weren't doing it with much. We got very fortunate to kind of add some guys from the city, like you said. One of my good friends at Burroughs High School, Joel Brinton, he kind of sent some players our way as well. And guys that were pretty good, not maybe Division I talent, but we had a pretty good team, we felt. And we were able to keep with the likes of guys from Mamba Academy and some of these other really good club teams, Balboa Bay. I think after we beat that team, we played Balboa Bay, Coast from San Diego as well. And these are teams with, like you said, the Palisades, say 5, 6, 7 division, actually more than that. Actually, their benches going to Division I. So it was kind of really cool to see those teams and see that level of play, even if you're not winning, right? You're just in the conversation. And I even tell my guys this all the time. You want to play in Division I. You got to, see what it's like, play against it. And the more you're around it, the more you're accustomed to it, right? So I think we had a lot of pride in, just being there and doing so well in the beginning. And, like I said, both of our boys team qualified for boys junior nationals, which is a really hard thing to do. And to have that now be cut, and not be able to have that opportunity is pretty tough. But like I said, there's a lot of guys from our club that are playing in college, whether it be Gunnar at Simpson and a couple guys going to Moore Park now, that make it a little bit easier. And the same thing with the girls side. I think we had a 16s team that was in the gold division. And with girls, there's so many more teams, right? I think in the girls 16s division, there's close to about 300-400 teams almost, and we kind of got into that gold where you're in the top 50, and that was like a really big thing for us. And even if we're the bottom 400 at you, who cares? As long as the kids are having fun, we're getting better, and we're teaching them the game and how to do things the right way. That was what's most important. And then the winning and kind of everything else just kind of is an added bonus, and being able to do it with people that you really like to do it with.
I'm glad kids from the city section have a place to go play volleyball, club volleyball. I know it hasn't been easy over the couple, past years. Like you said, SMBC. I know Bones out in, I believe, Thousand Oaks. Um, Mamba as well. So these clubs are kind of far away. A little bit of a drive for these parents who got to go to work every day. Luis and Gunnar, do you have any last things you want to say to them? And even your girl seniors, do you have anything you want to say to them before we finish up?
Yeah, I mean, for them, just kind of take what you've learned from these experiences in your life and just kind of make sure to, attack everything head on. I think this is probably one of the most challenging things that you've probably gone through in your life. And, when you go through some of these, I think I always feel like the people that go through the more adversity, the better, right? Because you become stronger for it. So, um, you know, understand that it was tough to not have your senior year. But at the same time, there's so many other memories and things that you've done within your 4 years at Chatsworth that have made you the person that you are. And like I said, the volleyball stops at some point. It's the relationships you develop. And now you're a part of, this group that's called alumni that, lasts forever. You have these relationships with all these guys and girls, and obviously Riley Gonzalez on the girls' side, she didn't, have her season cut short, but, they're all just a part of this culture and this family now, where, our alumni, we like to get together every so often and, just kind of reminisce and talk and I just use this and fuel yourself in your future endeavors. And I know all three of you guys are going to do great things with whatever you do and wherever you go.
Everyone, that's Sina Aghassy, a legend in the making at Chatsworth High School. Sina, I'll see you on Warzone tonight. Everyone, thanks for watching. That was episode 3 of the LA Volleyball Podcast. If you want to check out episode 2 or episode 1, go check them out on my channel. It should be either here or here or here. So, some of those places. But everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.